Here we go. Hi, everybody. It is Thursday, so we don't actually have an episode to review this week. So we are going to be talking Deep Space Nine and a little bit of Prodigy retrospective. Because, fun fact, Keith let us know that it was the 30th anniversary of the premiere of Emissary 2 days ago. That's right, y'all. It was January 3rd, 1993 when Emissary aired for the first time. So that's where we're going this time, and I hope you're going to be along for the ride. So, bean footage.
Roll it.
Okay, so I think William actually had the Prodigy part of this retrospective. So,
hey, so this is more so probably the ultimate Easter egg of the Prodigy series, the Prodigy season. It's not 100% official, but if you look close enough, it's definitely an Easter egg. And I'm going to tell you why this is more like an Easter egg than it is a cameo. But one could say that a certain ship made a certain appearance on the final episode of Prodigy. Can you two guess what that ship was?
The Voyager A.
No.
there was a Defiant moment.
No.
Or was it the Eisenberg?
No.
All right.
The USS Enterprise, NCC 171.
Oh yeah. We sincerely think this is actually how that one is
Bit
destroyed.
the dust, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I couldn't believe it when I saw it, or when I heard it. I believed it when I saw it. So many times we see like the USS Sovereign, we saw the name, we saw the 7-3 something. Well, you will not see the USS Enterprise on the front side, but if you look on the side, you will
see the nacelle, yes.
Of the nacelle, exactly. There it is, right there.
Yep.
1701E. And even in its screwed up state, there it is right there at the bottom left. 1701E. And they screwed and they purposely messed up the front part of the ship. So you really won't be able to read it. But I thought that was really, really cool.
Well, when you first saw a Sovereign ship in the episode, it was the USS Sovereign. Mm-hmm. But then when you saw a Sovereign ship come in at the end, it was the USS Sovereign again. So it was a small continuity error. But yes, I definitely caught that one of them was the E.
And didn't. I think we actually talked about this last week.
We talked about it last week, yes. Okay.
So, which leads me to another fun fact. So I don't know if you've been listening to the Janeway logs that they post on Instagram from time to time. So Janeway has been every episode. Janeway posts Admiral Janeway, Vice Admiral Janeway. I'm sorry, posts a new Admiral. I guess now Admiral's log every episode. So basically bringing us in between episodes. Well, she put out her final one, and this is from Kate Mulgrew too. Where she does the voiceover and it's perfect. And she pretty much says what was the aftermath after the season finale of Prodigy. Basically, the kids are doing great. They're being acclimated into the society. They found tasks that they enjoy. And she said that Dow's acceptance, not necessarily into Starfleet, but into the culture of Starfleet, is another step since Bashir versus Starfleet Medical.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she actually named it like that, and she said that this is a good progression towards all augments that cannot help where they came from or what their parents had done to them without their knowledge or consent. So yeah, I just thought that was really, really cool. And that brings us into, Deep Space Nine with Bashir.
Well, also the fact that 2 weeks ago we had Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the Illyrian Enigma came out, that follows directly after the end of season 1 of Strange New Worlds, where they're dealing with the same issue with the Illyrians. And this issue actually clearly states that the Illyrians we see in the case of Una Chin Riley is the same Illyrians we saw in Enterprise.
Okay.
Like they go to arrive at an Illyrian colony and they're like, maybe we shouldn't come up to that close because we are the Enterprise. And they don't have a good history with dealing with Starfleet ships called Enterprise. Archer kind of robbed them.
A little bit. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that's a really interesting question because like we talk about Dal, right? Because clearly now we're going to talk about this. Yay.
Hey.
So we talk about Dal and also Bashir in terms of not having agency over the augment decisions. That's actually one of the things I like about Strange New Worlds right now is that we're looking at Una Chin Riley, who is complicit in her genetic manipulation because that's her culture. That's where she's from. That's what they do. And she's very cognizant of the fact that that's what's going on. So I really think that that's kind of a really interesting nuance because I think it's easier to make the case for Bashir and Dal because again they had no agency over it. So like it's easier to hand wave the issue and say, all right, they had no agency. Therefore, we're not going to make their existence illegal, except they did.
Right.
But Una's different, and Una's actually raising the question of, why do we have this bias? Is this something that we need to bring forward?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I don't necessarily know that I entirely agree with Janeway that this is a great way to advance the cause. Also, hi, Nanny.
Hey, Nanny.
Because I think Una's question at the end of, I don't remember the title of the episode. I'm blanking on it. But
but I know what you're talking about.
When she says, when is it going to be that I'm enough on my own? Is, I think, a better question to be asking. And I love the fact that Strange New Worlds is grappling with it because Deep Space Nine, while my favorite series by far, let's be real, doesn't grapple with that.
Right.
And basically makes Bashir a victim, and a victim who has had to hide his victimization.
Well, yes, seriously. And it makes sense that when he finally is outed in a most like 50s comedy oddball way, it makes sense because there was always something off about him. Even though we had no idea this was coming, Sid had no idea this was coming. The writers came up with it only when they got to that episode, but it made sense.
I mean, basically, it was a great way to kind of hand wave their terrible treatment of the character.
Yes.
In the sense that, like, Bashir kind of fell into, like, the Geordi slot.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
In that here's an adult man of color.
Yes.
The fuck do we do with him?
Yeah, they needed something to do with him, just like they needed something to do with Troy, right?
Geordi, I'd say.
And Geordi, yeah.
Because I mean, let's be real. Every time Geordi tried to have a relationship on TNG, it was like borderline stalker.
Oh yeah. A Quality of Mercy, by the way, is the episode of Strange Worlds.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie. This is what the character development, the sudden character development that they gave Bashir was a rare acceptance for Trekkies, because normally when you just throw something out there, we're just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But in his case, they actually thought it through. Yeah. I know we didn't have anything last season, but this season we have something. He's an augment. What? Yeah, go ahead.
Especially since they kept on making the point of the fact that he could have been valedictorian because he made that one mistake, that one little mistake. And then in the an episode, they pointed out, those
ganglionic
can't make that mistake.
Now
that I think about it, what if he missed that question on purpose?
No,
that's
literally what they said. They said that that was part of him hiding his genetic augmentation, was that he made that mistake so it wouldn't call it someone attention to it.
So that's why he's so hell-bent over it, because he's just like, I really could have gotten it, but I purposely found a question that is almost obliviously stupid, and I just missed it and said, oh, I'm mistaken this fiber optic nerve for posting something. I forgot.
Pre-ganglionic nerve for post-ganglionic
fiber.
I can't believe I remembered that much. Anyway, girl ain't even all that anyway. She's on a Nebula-class starship.
I know. When she shows up, it's just like
wearing a TNG uniform.
Well, of course, because they were back then. The DS9 uniform was only for space stations, and
at the time,
they decided.
Was that the excuse we were giving?
Yes.
Well, we were talking about uniforms. I
will tell you that the Deep Space Nine uniform is legit my favorite.
Oh, because I loved it when Riker wore it in Generations. I loved it.
Well, the thing is, that was Sisko's. He was wearing Avery Brooks's uniform.
You shut up.
They didn't have time to make more. Originally, Generations was supposed to get all new uniforms.
Oh my god!
They cheapened out on it, and so they went.
Know.
Yes, he was wearing Avery Brooks's uniform.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Manny. We were fighting over who was going to.
Yes, the Lethean did know. Yes. Yeah, in the episode where it's Bashir's birthday, where he gets shocked into his mind, the Lethean pointed out that the two things are in no way alike. You purposefully got it wrong.
Why did I miss that? Oh,
I have no idea.
Wow.
But by the way, as far as Geordi being not so great with ladies, they also fixed that in the comics with Star Trek Resurgence #2, which came out 3 weeks ago, in which you have a lovely scene starting of Geordi in the holodeck with Brahms, the real Leah Brahms, actually being cool and supportive and not being a stalker.
I have so many thoughts on that episode. I do. I have so many thoughts. I almost need to go get the jug of Costco eggnog for this. And that was in fact an entire FTP episode that we did.
Oh, as it should be. He was horrible in that episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then the show, the episode literally expected us to side with Geordi and to basically and forces Leah Brahms to apologize to Geordi for being horrified by the fact that
I'm so sorry I found your browser history and it was all
and it was all porn of me.
To porn. It's not porn. This is not Twitter.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
How? If you want to,
it is coded as being.
When you touch this engine, you're touching me. Come on.
I object. If you want to watch porn, you go to Quarks. You go to Quarks.
No.
Quarks
said it himself. When you go to the holodeck, you go to Come on.
We know that Barclay was boinking Troy on the holodeck.
Okay, that's an anomaly. He was special.
It's not.
That's an anomaly.
I'm going to point out that we have an entire segment where Beckett has to go clean out the biofilters in the holodeck.
Yeah.
In the holodeck is now
Even said, did people actually use that for sex? Yes, all the time.
Have a bunch of a cloth matter. You probably had some holographic food. I don't know.
And this is another thing I love about Deep Space Nine, right? Is because Deep Space Nine completely and openly acknowledges what the fuck we'd all be using holosuites for, which is
essentially the ultimate form of masturbation.
Yeah.
Suddenly the show has gotten way far into the PG-13/R rating.
You even had an episode where you had two couples using the two holosuites for that exact act at the exact same time.
Well,
You had
okay,
Worf and Dax in one, and you had
let's
Quark and Grilka in the other.
No,
let us talk about for a second the fact that like Quark literally wanted a scan of Kira
Yes.
so that he could sell the opportunity to boink Kira.
Yes. The very first episode to feature Mr. Jeffrey Combs.
That is
Fair play.
Yeah.
That was kind of fucked up. I'm not gonna lie to you.
But, and it also gave us some of the best memes because he was actually looking at them through the scanner, and they turned and looked at the camera. It makes such a great meme.
My favorite one is I don't know what it was, but it's just like it's like that 3-section meme, and it's just like I don't know. Well, one out of 3 people watches Star Trek. Is it you? No, is it you? Then they both look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, but also, can we have a moment to talk about that? Because like one of the things that Deep Space Nine was able to do as opposed to say TNG or even Voyager, is it was able to engage on a much more realistic level with sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
They did push boundaries. They pushed more boundaries.
Like, I mean, they went to Risa, y'all.
Yeah, heterosexually.
They went to Risa, not just talked about it, not just showed us the Horgon. They went to Risa.
They even talked about men having children.
Mm-hmm.
A litter of children. I forgot what species he was.
Well, just the clear fact that Deep Space Nine was not a Starfleet facility. It was not ruled by Starfleet rules. It was Bajoran mixed, but Starfleet mixed, but more kind of open.
Yeah,
because if it was a purely Bajoran facility, there would have been a lot less talk of sex.
Yeah, Bajor wasn't even admitted into the Federation until season 7. Like,
not even that. No,
they never did. They turned it down.
I thought
in Deep Space Nine, they turn it down and decide to wait.
Oh,
after.
We're not talking about the aftermath. We're talking about in the Okay.
Yeah. Later they do, because in a certain episode, first episode of season 2, you see their flag, and I'm not saying.
I love you, Keith. I do.
I love you too, Marie.
I don't remember.
Yeah, they were about to join. They're about to join, but Sisko had his visions.
Of course,
Bajor must stand alone, and so he blew up the whole negotiations because the Dominion were coming, and if Bajor had been part of the Federation, the Dominion would have attacked Bajor.
Mm-hmm.
So by Bajor standing alone, they were able to sign a non-aggression treaty with the Dominion.
I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And ultimately, I think there were enough issues with what the Bajorans wanted versus what Starfleet wanted. The Bajorans wanted the opportunity to stand a little bit on their own for a while before they became. I mean, I think they end up with like Federation Protectorate status.
Yeah. Well, when we do go back to Deep Space Nine in this last season of Lower Decks, when you go to Ops, every single person working there is Bajoran. You don't see a single Starfleet uniform. Which is
the point, right? Like, I mean, that was the entire goal, is that So Deep Space Nine really is kind of rooted in that very 90s concept of nation building.
Mm-hmm. Those first couple seasons, especially when they had the terrorist group led by the first minister, which was played by the great Frank Langella.
Yep.
And where they basically act as terrorists against their own station and take it over to force out Starfleet. And Steven Weber in one of his first acting roles before he went to Beyond Wings on NBC.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God!
Wow.
Yeah, this show.
About that.
Yeah. Now, I have to admit, I watched maybe a couple episodes of season 1 when it first came out and was not sold on it at all. It wasn't until season 3 that I started watching it. Basically, I started watching it right about the time that Ira Steven Behr took over as showrunner. And that's when you go to the episode "The Die Is Cast," the first of a 2-part episode where they have the Romulans and Cardassians attacking the Dominion. That's when I started really watching, and that's when I got hooked. And you watch those episodes now, there's a clear difference between when he took over and before.
Yes, because Ira Behr had a very distinct vision for what Deep Space Nine could be. Mm-hmm. And what was great about it is that Berman became so focused on other projects that Behr pretty much had the opportunity to do whatever the hell he wanted, and nobody really cared.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we had,
and that I think is why so much of Deep Space Nine is so much more rewatchable. And I know this is, again, I realize this is going to be blasphemy, but go with me on this. It's so much more rewatchable than certain swaths of even TNG, right?
Mhm. The later seasons of TNG definitely had a few.
Season 7, sorry.
Yeah. But, well, you got to remember at that point, you had Berman running it, and Michael Piller was in poor health and dying into the late 90s. You had Jerry Taylor, who put all of her effort into Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
And Berman's trying to run it all. Not
That's
just.
a lot.
Yeah, because at that point, he's not only in charge of Next Generation is ending, but now he's running Generations and the movies. So he's running the movies. So Bear gets to take over Deep Space Nine because Berman is now doing the movies. And
I gotta tell you,
Taylor is running Voyager.
And that benevolent neglect is what gives us a real gem.
Absolutely. And also, the first episode Ira is in charge of is the first episode where Sisko gets to grow the goatee.
Yeah, because I remember we had a whole debate about the aesthetic look of Sisko.
Yeah, they did not want Hawk. They did not want Hawk.
They did not. No.
So they said you had to grow your hair in and you had to shave.
I wouldn't either. I don't want you to look the same for 7 seasons straight. Like,
but also I think there was also just a question of like how to navigate Avery Brooks's blackness.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, because, you know, like there really was this whole kind of, and it probably still exists because the world is awful. This very sort of like cerebral correlation between like facial hair and, you know, like, and black men and violence.
Well, just in Star Trek, we got the correlation between facial hair and the mirror universe.
Also,
well, I mean, they meant it in a joking way, but they kind of touched on that in TNG when Geordi and Worf were at the table talking about beards, and then Data, for some half-cocked reason, went and got himself a beard.
And Crusher was making jokes about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there was literally even an episode where like they bet on making somebody shave, and I gotta tell you, like Frakes looks so much like. As we're talking about beards, Frakes looks so much better with a beard.
Yeah,
he looks so much better because I didn't understand. I mean, I appreciated the fun they might have been having in Insurrection, but as far as like preference goes, definitely keep the beard.
He and I have the same problem. We have baby face when we don't have the beard.
I shaved one.
I mean, I don't know what he would look like now with the beard because I think the man has not been clean shaven since.
Probably not.
He's gone down to just having the goatee, but yeah, like for me, if I completely shave, my chin like disappears, and I definitely have a baby face.
They go down to the goatee when he was playing as Thomas in Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Yeah. Now I had a whole Brittany moment when I shaved my entire beard, and that was in college, and it looked okay back then, but as I think about it now, I have like a grown baby face, and I don't like it.
Yeah, same here, and they even mentioned it in the Pegasus episode of Next Generation that he was Lieutenant Babyface. Manny,
hey,
what are you doing up so late?
Speaking of
Lieutenant
Babyface,
right?
You guys are talking all about this DS9 stuff. I had to jump in.
I mean, yeah, absolutely, because
30 years, Manny.
He slicked his hair back.
I did slick it back, yeah. Work.
You're going for the aerodynamic look.
He's trying to pull that Daddy Bashir look.
I was so intrigued about your comments about Bashir being similar to the Geordi slot. I had so many comments I wanted to make, but I couldn't type fast enough. I was just walking to work.
All right,
so let's
hit that. Let's hit that.
Honestly, like, wow. Go ahead, man. Oh, just the fact that it's so crazy that we're dealing with augments again in this different space. DS9 pushed things, but it didn't push it right, and we still have issues with the way they did it. But remember, contextually, guys, like Ira Steven Behr in the documentary, he lamented that he couldn't push things more sexually. He lamented the fact that
if they would have gotten season 8, he said he definitely would have gone more into it.
I mean,
that's right.
But I think he really does a great job of letting Andrew Robinson push the envelope of sexuality for Garak.
Oh, by far, yes.
Like, because there's, I mean, yes, that first episode, we were just talking about this before we went live. We really should have just hit the play button far earlier than we did.
Far earlier.
But I mean, you know, because like Andrew Robinson comes out and has that intense session, like that
Phrasing.
intense season,
He
like
touches, he literally rubs his hands all over the top part of his chest and shoulders. And I'm sitting here, and my 12-year-old self is not registering any.
I hate you.
When he does the whole, and you can just see like a rainbow going over top.
I know, right? And it's great, right? Because like Bashir runs up to Ops and it's just like, I think I just met a spy, and everybody else
Right.
Always in section
But yeah.
31,
And he didn't realize at all.
They better have something in
Completely over his head.
They need to be together in section 31 in some way. It doesn't even have to be official. I want some sort of crazy, adventurous, toxic ass way, because you know Garrett crazy as hell. Like,
yeah, but in a weird way. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna fight you on toxic though, because
okay.
in a very weird way, I actually think Garrick is more aware of the necessity, like, of how relationship dynamics work.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think it's really been fascinating because, like, you know, despite Bashir's weird sort of automatic assumption that Garrick wants information from him, which is hilarious because
He wants information, all right, but not in the way that you would think.
I know, right? Like Garrick is literally, I mean, it's hilarious, right? Because Garrick is literally like, I know everything that you could possibly tell me. I'm really just interested in you for your twink ass. Like,
is that why is that why he lies to Bashir so many times? Why he was willing to almost sacrifice the senior staff on the Hollow Suite just to see what Bashir would do? Like, because Garrett does a lot of immoral shit. And are you suggesting that it's all in the name of testing Bashir's limits?
I think Garrick is doing that for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Like, I think Garrick's getting off on that a little bit. But what's interesting is there's always a point he won't pass. There's a line with Bashir he won't cross.
Can you name that? Because it's like, because now I'm sort of taken back to when Worf caught him trying to destroy something on the Define or whatever with the founders.
So here's the deal. Please note that it was Worf who caught him.
That was Worf. Yeah.
One. And the whole business within the Pale Moon Light, when, you know, he blows up the Romulan, that is an interaction he has with Sisko. This is not something he's going to do with Bashir.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah, even when Bashir starts having his crazy Section 31 hijinks, Garrick is nowhere to be found.
Right.
No, Garrick is not in any of the Section 31 episodes.
Maybe he's keeping his distance. Maybe he's observing.
I know, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. You should, and if anyone, he should be there, but it's not.
He should be the first one there.
Because he knows he doesn't want to be there.
O'Brien knows about it before Garrick does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I think there really is like this. I think Garrick is basically trying to compartmentalize his relationship with Bashir over here, as opposed to like putting it over here and blending it with some of the more nefarious shenanigans that he gets up to in other ways.
Why is he not coming back up?
What happened, Manny?
Manny, are you there?
Manny's been frozen for a while, which is
he's been frozen for a minute.
Yeah. So I really like the fact that, like, again, I really like that they did that, because I think, you know, there's this really interesting aspect to Garrick that's far more aware of what relationships look like. Because remember, we're talking about Garrick, whose father never acknowledged him.
Right.
So he's aware of. He's kind of aware of where that relationship. I mean, I don't mean to bring like the dad thing into the sexual thing. It's not it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I do think that there's a really interesting sort of awareness of how our actions impact these relationships that other Cardassians don't have. Because if you watch Gul Dukat, even if you watch Damar, they're not great at thinking about the emotional impacts for other people.
Right. They're not really good at doing that. Even towards each other, they're not good at doing that.
No, you get some of that with the female characters, which
Yeah.
we can chalk that up to. I mean, I do think we can chalk some of that up to '90s misconceptions about like women and women's roles and blah 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 blah.
Or
But sorry,
just Berman.
I feel dirty that we even had to say that word. But I do think it's really. But I do think it's really interesting that we're trying to kind of set Cardassians apart in this space.
Mhm.
Okay.
And one of the things that makes Garrick so interesting is that Garrick has been away from Cardassia, right? Like, I mean, he's been exiled for so long that we're kind of watching Garrick develop emotional intelligence that no other similarly situated Cardassian has.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we're talking about you touched on the father in this bit, can we transition over to a comparison of the parenthood throughout Deep Space Nine? Because we have a lot of different parents.
Ooh.
Yes, we do.
Like both that have adult children and young children. Even Keiko, I almost forgot about Keiko. Like
Well, even Miles forgets about Keiko.
Even
Right.
Miles, yeah. I think Deep Space Nine gives Keiko far more to do than TNG ever did.
True. And she
Yeah.
actually had a job on the ship. She does not have a well, no, they gave her a job on DS9, but then they blew it up.
Yeah. One of the things I liked about all right, so I was a military spouse, right? And watch it, and I did not appreciate this when I was a kid watching Deep Space Nine originally. But watching Keiko struggle with having had to move to accommodate Miles, and then get stuck in this situation where there's nothing for her to do, hit so much harder as an adult, like living that life.
that part, especially in a society where you don't have to really need anything. Everything is already provided for you.
Oh, but she
Except
should have
the-
had a job. She should have had a job.
I mean, she's
Because-
a botanist, guys. Like, I mean, she's an accomplished botanist.
At one point, you had Miles trying to build an arboretum in one of the cargo holds, but you have to think you have this space station, and it is in no way self-supporting as far as food beyond the replicator. She should have been running their
Aeroponics base.
hydroponics, any of
But
that.
my guess was, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Though I think that's kind of hand waved because there's some discussion about like, I mean, obviously the space station was constructed by the Cardassians, and so they may have had different needs and they may have different solutions to that kind of thing.
And plus, Bajor was only 8 minutes away, but originally it was built, it was right in Bajor's orbit, so they could always just bring whatever they needed up from Bajor.
Yeah, they could
And
just
I think that's very much one of the things that's one of the dynamics that they try to play with. There are things that Deep Space Nine drops, and that's
Mhm.
one of them.
can you name like drops like what? Like
So so certainly sort of dropping the whole concept of figuring out like how food gets there and that
Oh.
sort of relationship with Bajor. Kind of, I mean, it's there, but it doesn't really. It's kind of hand waved in the same sense that like Voyager's amazing ability to replicate shellcraft,
Yeah.
gets kind of hand waved.
yeah.
I also think there are some very real conversations about jurisdiction and power that don't quite get fully developed until all of a sudden Cisco's tanking the negotiations.
Well, how about when they changed up the opening credits? They improved the music, they added Worf, but they now had several runabouts leaving the station. Like
Mhm.
in the
course.
original credits, it was just the one runabout that came about. But
Mm.
now when they redid it, there's like 3 going away, and it's like you
Yeah.
couldn't have put any other ship.
And
Now, this looks like it's Starfleet is fleeing the station because here's 1, 2, 3 runabouts going away.
Except a runabout's a short range craft.
No,
So where are they going?
no, they're not short range.
one of the ships that really
They're certainly not deep space.
One of the ships that really confused me, and you don't really see it outside of the opening and ending credits of Deep Space Nine, is the half-assed Intrepid.
What?
Oh,
someone trying to sell us on promotion.
Oh, that's exciting.
Thanks for your offering, but we're busy right now.
We're good. But we're a nerd group here. We're good. So anyway, is the half-assed Intrepid looking ship with the weird neck thing and the deflectors at the very bottom. So it's like Intrepid at the top, and then you have this long neck, and then the deflectors right there. And you see it almost every time the end credits happen on Deep Space Nine. And so but you didn't really start seeing it until like after season 3, like when the new credits started to happen. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if y'all know about that shit that I'm talking about. Do y'all like?
No.
I gotta tell you that. Okay, so I'm weirdly among Star Trek nerds not obsessed with starships. I know that's kind of like blasphemy or heresy. Like I get it. Like everybody's like, this class does this, blah 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 blah, and I'm like over here going, okay. But the social message.
So you had 3 Danube class runabout vessels. You had the Nebula class, the Worker Bee, the large freighter, the Janitza class Bajoran starship, and then the Defiant. Those were the ones that were in the opening credits.
Okay, that's the opening credits. So I usually see it at the end credits then. But anyway,
there are ships in the end credits?
Well, it's like usually right before the end credits happen, and then you see like the closing.
I mean, I love it. Like Keith is literally going to be loading up Deep Space Nine.
I promise. I am looking for it right now because I know it's an ugly ship. It's really it. I put it on par with how ugly Discovery was in season 1. Like I do, and I'm gonna look for. I
like that you're dying on that hill though, because I really liked the Discovery design.
I need to look for this ship, like Deep Space Nine.
Oh. By the way, if you have,
I think we were gonna talk about parenting on Deep Space Nine, because Deep Space Nine is unique in that we have multiple characters that have children.
Oh yeah, multiple.
And multiple crossovers where you have either you have the dads of several of the characters or father-like figures. Like you do see Kira's father, but you also see people that were like a father to her, including the one Cardassian guy from the time that she was horribly scarred and turned into a Cardassian.
Oh yeah, she adopted.
Yeah, that was kind of freakish.
That was even worse than what they did to Troy and turning her into a Romulan.
That is pretty much the same.
Except the Troy Romulan episode ends up being such a great moment for Troy.
Yes,
because she had no other choice but to pull out her what was that episode?
Inner badass, yeah,
her inner disaster episode. Because when she had to take command of the ship, and all that. I don't know if disaster happened before or after. I think I'm pretty sure it was before. But so she had to pull that out of her and be like, I'm finna get blown out of the airlock if I don't start acting like a badass. Which I'm glad they gave her that character dynamic, because she's more than looking like a space cheerleader is what Marina Sirtis said.
I mean, because clearly that outfit
and that hair,
like legit full on pom-poms. But we've got Sisko and Jake.
Yeah.
Right. We've got Rom and Nog.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Miles and his kids. In fact, we actually have a really intense Molly episode.
Yes, in season 7, yeah.
And that is one I have not been able to go back and watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 2 really intense episodes with Molly, because there's that one where she gets lost in the time vortex thing, mm-hmm. But there's also the episode where he comes back from having been imprisoned for 20 years, but it was actually only 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And where he is legitimately takes a moment and is what would it actually be considered a horrible father, but to him was the absolute worst a father could be, such that he almost kills himself because he yelled at his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that moment definitely hit me pretty hard as a dad watching that.
Yeah, it's not. I can't go back and watch certain parts of those, because they will just mess me up. Especially having had such a fraught situation where almost losing the twins and blah blah blah. Like, no, can't do it.
Then you have Worf, and
that's right. We
get
the Alexander episodes with Worf.
Yes.
Oh God, Worf is the poster child for terrible.
I need you to completely analyze Worf because now that Alexander is an adult in this, a clumsy one, where the hell did the clumsy come from? I didn't see no clumsy in TNG.
We did. We did.
But he didn't like knock over a whole can of Kanar while doing it. Like he was just
Kanar is Cardassian, first of all. But remember, he had to save the creatures from the fire.
I know, but
and it doesn't work out super well. But also, by the way, like while we're talking about parents, we have Gul Dukat.
Yes,
as the father,
and Ziyal.
Well,
when Ziyal passed, that hit me. That
was not okay.
And it hit him.
Which was shocking, right? Like, I mean,
because he was ready to kill her the first episode we had her on.
Yes, but he would have probably felt comfortable if he was the one to do it. But then now someone else took that away from him.
Mm-hmm. And not just someone, but Damar, who was like a son to him. And especially that was after he lost everything. He lost his wife. He lost his family.
Everything.
When Ziyal was made public.
Was discovered,
and he ended up becoming the captain of this lowly Cardassian freighter with Damar as his number 2. And, Glenn Damar at that point. And then he basically takes Damar in as his de facto son because he's lost everything else. Mm-hmm. So he's got Ziyal and he's got Damar, and then for Damar to kill Ziyal, it's like
it's this weird sort of. I mean, I really think Dukat has a psychotic break there.
Oh, he definitely does.
Oh, he lost it.
He's sitting in a break saying Ziyal.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and I actually think it's that moment that opens him up to the Pod Wraiths.
Yep.
Yeah, because he was looking for someone to fill that gap, and what better way than a demon to come in and say, "Hey, I'll give you everything."
Yeah, who hasn't heard of a parent that lost a child that goes off and joins some extreme religious sect?
Huh. Who'd have thought? But I think it's even more than that, though, because what's interesting about the Dukat relationship, as opposed to some of the other relationships that we have with parental relationships we have, is that Ziyal actually becomes a function of Dukat's narcissism. So it's less that Ziyal as a person is killed, so much as it's Damar's betrayal. Because it's not. I mean, while he sits there in the brig moaning Ziyal, he has such a limited grasp on who she was and what she wanted.
Well, remember, she refused to leave the station, and so he left her in the care of Kira, which fantastic choice, the best he could have hoped for. And then she starts hanging out with Garak because he's the only other Cardassian on the station, and Garak is kind of like, I don't know what to do with this girl, and
because Garak is very much like I'm a gay man, dude. Like, what do you want?
I also want to put this out there that Garak and Dukat slept with each other.
No.
Yes.
That's a nightmare I don't need. Thank you.
I'm telling you.
No, I don't get that vibe at all.
They had too much Kanar one night and they had it down.
No.
How I know this is because I watched what's Bashir's character's name? What's the actor's name?
Siddiq Al-Fadil.
So I saw
Alexander Siddiq.
Yeah. So him and
the name that's like 8 words long.
Yeah, that part. So Sid and Andrew do this and it's a script and they're reading it off and it's like it's a Star Trek fanfic.
No, I distinctly remember that there's that whole implication. But I don't buy that.
I don't.
It adds to the reason why Dukat hates Garak so much. It's like, not only did you have my father killed, you slept with me, and now you want my daughter?
No.
I think there's enough of the you had my father killed, and also I think Garak's existence would be really offensive to Dukat.
Yeah.
Just
the.
I mean, I don't see I certainly don't see Dukat tolerating ins with alternative sexualities. Period. And I certainly don't see Dukat dealing well with alternative versions of masculinity.
Yes.
And Garrick has a very different way of doing things. He's got a very different way of doing things, even for Obsidian Order members.
Yeah. That's kind of what made him so great. His eye.
Exactly. That's why he was so freaking like effective.
Yeah. He doesn't play the alpha. Like Dukat is constantly pushing the alpha. And Garrick is doing his own thing.
Not that I like the whole like alpha, beta, omega dynamic thing. Yeah. Well, okay. So the ABO fanfic is a different issue entirely, but but this whole concept of like alpha males, beta males, blah 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 is like it's based on bad science. It's based on science that the gentleman who promulgated it eventually was like, yeah, no, I was wrong.
I found it.
The ship? Yeah, okay.
Top left.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
But moving back to the parenting thing, because I really do think Deep Space Nine is actually unusual in the Star Trek canon in that we have so many different blood family dynamics.
Okay.
Well, even look at Dax as a father-like figure to Sisko. Old man. And we get having this young woman almost act like a father to this much older black man.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Right. I mean, props to Avery Brooks and Terry Farrell. Like that would have been an incredibly difficult dynamic to sell, and yet they do.
Until we have that one episode where we find out that she's secretly in love with Ben and Jake is secretly in love with her. And
I mean,
I'm sorry, that's just what? That's one of those episodes that didn't happen.
It's one of a Loxana episodes.
Dax is the father to Sisko, but I can see Jadzia having a crush on Sisko, but I don't see Dax having a crush on Sisko. Like,
oh no. Well, we saw Curzon had a crush on Jadzia, which that's fair.
Which explains that. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what? No, I'm gonna fight you on that one. I don't think that was fair.
What? So, because have a crush on Jadzia?
In fact, I think that entire dynamic is just so.
What? Because
okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
we're never.
I'm looking at it as the fact, the fact that Jadzia was attractive. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes, it was not fair. He's supposed to be training her and guiding her. He should not be having sexual thoughts about her.
But I never thought of it the way Keith put it earlier. It's just like here we have this. Even though I'm gonna lie to you, it took me until adulthood for me to remotely accept that Trill are a different species. I still have a hard time accepting it. But that said, I looked.
The spots go all the way down, William.
Well, okay. I thought it was like a symbolism thing to know that you went to Trill and you went through training and all this other bullshit. Apparently not. Apparently, because when I saw Will carry this, I'm thinking, oh, anyone can carry it. And we found out later on in Discovery, anyone can. The Simian has to.
Except that not at all what happens in the Host.
No,
I mean, right. So they really took it, and
the Symbiont almost dies. Well, Riker almost dies. Like it is a shit.
So basically, what they're saying is the host would rather die than give permission to a host that has no business being in until Discovery. Like when we see.
No, because there's that whole business with like the murderer Dax.
Yeah.
What the hell is his name?
I mean, in my head it's Jarrell, but like that's not right because that's
Gerard, something.
Joaquin.
We're struggling on this one, but yeah.
I really didn't think about it like this. We have this Caucasian-looking lady who's younger, who looks even younger, and is a father figure in a sense to Benjamin Sisko, who is this older, more distinguished-looking black man. And I have not thought of it like that until Keith actually put it into words. Like I never thought of it like that, and they pulled it off. Like it was believable to me. I was like,
exceptionally well, yes.
Yeah.
Like you lived 7 lifetimes. I'm pretty sure that you had more kids than anyone.
Yeah, no. And Dax makes a comment that they've been a mother and a father, and they've
Right.
done it well and badly at various points.
Right.
Now,
And
speaking of doing it well, I would, before we end, I'd like to talk about Rom.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been paying the dishonor to Rom by not getting to him sooner.
Yes,
By
Because-
far the best father on Deep Space Nine.
exactly. Exactly.
What?
Stood up for
Period.
Absolutely.
Hands down.
He stood up for his
More than Cisco?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
He
much
stood
more.
up. He flat out stood up to his own brother, who he
Mhm.
feared for like seasons 1 through 5. And now he just said, look, I love you and all, and I do want the bar, but screw all that. You ain't gonna do my son this way. If he wants to go to Starfleet, basically, it's not the fact that it was Starfleet. It was Rom accepting Nog for who he is or who he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big
never.
Yeah.
There's never a moment when Rom is not 100% supportive of Nog.
Yeah.
Like even in that terrible like family dinner situation where Nog has to sit on the floor, Rom is far more aware of what's going on with Nog than Cisco is sometimes with Jake.
Yeah, the very first time we had Rom, when he's literally going and dragging Nog by the ear out of security, that's not great. But that's before they actually, it is Max Groening, but it's not Rom yet. They hadn't fully formed.
They haven't figured that out. There's that, but also I gotta tell you, like, I don't know. Maybe your kids are like super well behaved all the time. Mine are not. And I definitely have moments when I'm like, I do understand that impulse. I wouldn't do that, obviously, but again, I do understand that impulse.
Yeah. When you look at the fathers on the show, the actual fathers, you had Cisco, who basically deserts Jake twice.
Mm-hmm.
First, when they have to abandon Deep Space Nine, Jake stays behind in a now occupied station. And then at the very end of the show, when he goes off to fight Dukat and win, and he doesn't say anything to Jake. He just leaves the party and goes. And then who gets the vision? Cassidy. Cassidy gets the vision, not Jake.
Right.
Jake has been there from the beginning.
Honestly, and it's like, and I get in terms of marriage that you put your spouse first type thing, depending on how you define marriage. But I will say Benjamin Sisko did a lot more for Bajor than he did for Jake.
Yeah.
And I mean, and there's good science actually that indicates that having a good marital relationship is more important to raising children well, or at least not just a partner relationship if you are partnered,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's more important to creating a stable environment. So I sort of get that, but again, you know, like Cassidy gets the personal goodbye and Jake is just left hanging. That's what makes that last image
Jake
of Jake staring at the wormhole with Kira so much worse.
It is so heartbreaking. Yes,
it's awful.
What is nice when they did return Cisco in the new comic series, the very first thing they have with him coming back is an article, "What We Left Behind" by Jake Sisko, talking about what it was like to lose his dad. The war was ended, we won, but I've lost my dad. And him trying to get it published by anyone, and no one would take it.
No one would take it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, yeah, and that's terrible. It's just so awful. And and the fact that he's doing that side by side with Kira, who is looking at that wormhole and thinking about Odo.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah.
Like these are two people who have put other interests ahead of these significant relationships in their lives, and I get really angry at What We Left Behind, because What We Left Behind, the episode seems to expect that we're going to understand these sacrifices, and I don't.
I think Manny's frozen.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's trying to talk. I can hear him, but I don't know what
But
he's
yeah, it is.
We hear you, Manny. Come through. Come through.
Come to us. But it kind of reminds me of the similar decision that because Admiral Janeway poses that same argument to Captain Janeway in Endgame, pretty much saying, "Hey, I understand why you did what you did, but why did you?" Right, exactly. but you can't keep
pick this up this week.
But you can't keep putting the lives of strangers ahead of the lives of your crew. You can't make the same mistake again. And yet we see that that's all Benjamin Sisko ever does. He goes on a whole manhunt for Michael Eddington like he's freaking
Javert.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and it's really funny because like this is right around the same time that we're dealing with the evolution of like first contact and this whole kind of like Ahab metaphor.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
So
Yeah,
there's
we hear you, Manny.
a zeitgeist going on here.
All right, Manny, take it. Come on.
Yeah, because we know you guys.
You're still moving, so go.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to push back on the fact that Sisko abandoned Jake the first time. Jake was a grown man and he stayed behind on the station. And that is not a bad parental decision. That is allowing your kid to make bad choices. But I'm not a parent, so I don't know.
In a war zone.
I mean,
He needed to
also,
learn. He's a grown man.
I'm going to shut that down because the idea. I remember being 18. I do.
Yeah, he did
and
dumb
I got to
things.
tell you, I was not a grown ass adult at 18.
You remember the grandfather saying, "So you didn't leave my grandson in a war zone with bloodthirsty Cardassians everywhere?"
Oh my! Papa Sisko did check him for doing that.
Yep.
I mean, massive props to Papa Sisko, right? Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I understand the idea of letting your child like make decisions that you don't approve of. There's making decisions you don't approve of in the sense of letting him hang out with Nog before like you got over your racist issues.
Yeah, there was
Which is a whole thing that happened.
They were racist towards each other. They were, yeah.
And then there's also like, I mean, and I get that Sisko could not have compelled Jake to leave. But there are significant swaths of time in which Sisko just sort of forgets that Jake exists.
Yeah,
that is true.
And especially during the war.
And so much that, and even though Manny's frozen right now, I hope he even so much. Remember this: Jake took the time to go with his mirror universe mother to the mirror universe without Sisko's knowledge or consent, and he wasn't 18 yet. So it's just like, hey, my father's not around so much. Maybe this duplicate of my mother will. I know she's not my biological mother, but at least she'll make me. I'm not saying Jake didn't feel love because there was plenty of affection, between.
Yeah, no, I think that's phenomenal.
That's great, awesome. Like breaking. I love all that, but as far as like spending time, I mean, because you got to think, what the hell was Jake doing? Like the rest of the fucking time, like Wesley did more shit. Like,
right?
What was he doing? Like he's just there. Like,
well, Jake, of all the kids, like when you look back at how horribly written Wesley was, especially season 1 of Next Generation, versus how well written Jake was the whole series, and Nog was the whole series. Well, Nog, of course, is the epitome of well written child character, even though he was the actor was in his late 20s.
Right.
Everything. Aaron Eisenberg.
Yeah. Everything they did, the way Jake and Nog were presented in Deep Space Nine was so incredibly well done. The fact that Jake didn't want to go to Starfleet, and Nog did, and that they were given the chance to explore their own desires, their own wishes.
That is literally, I think, one of my favorite episodes in Deep Space Nine is actually when they're on that ship with the other students.
Yes.
Oh, the Red Squad.
Valiant.
And they all died except for
I hated the scene though when they're all talking and Jake goes, "Well, you all know my father, Ben Sisko," and I'm like, "Oh, you're so full of yourself right now, Jake." But
and yet, like I defy you to find the 18-year-old who doesn't do that shit.
Yeah, but really, for me, The Visitor, that excellent episode with Jake and Ben, that one's killer. Absolutely kills.
but going back to that ship episode, what I like about it is this very real dichotomy between Nog and Jake. So here's Jake, who's grown up with Starfleet, right? And rejected Starfleet as a life path.
Yes.
Who is standing outside of this and saying they're objectively nuts. And then we've got Nog, who is the new devotee, right? Like the one who is embracing Starfleet and is trying to be more Starfleet than Starfleet.
And he's given immediate power once he gets on the ship. He's immediately become chief engineer,
right?
And it's everything he's ever wanted suddenly there given to him.
And it takes it's so much, and he repudiates Jake during this episode, right? Like, whereas Jake is again objectively making more sense, right?
But that's the point of the episode, right? To fill his head with
exactly, because it's literally kind of throwing into relief the darker side of what Starfleet does and what it expects of its adherents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the fact, and I don't think we could have had that episode without that dichotomy. And even in that moment when Jake, again, because yes, Jake's being full of himself, but Jake's pointing out that he has legitimate receipts. Like, he has lived this life in a way that none of the rest of them have.
He's an army brat.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And he's been through the worst of it. He lost his mother at Wolf 359 on the Saratoga.
Yeah,
they were both on that ship.
Yeah, he was on that ship, and then in the aftermath, before they go to Deep Space Nine, when his dad is running Utopia Planitia, he's been through the ship life, he's been through the engineer life. Now he's going to be on the station, on the frontier life. And he's on that it all.
When he's on that ship with Nog, with Red Squad and stuff, and he's like, Nog, come on, man. Like, and he's the one pointing it out, but Nog's head is so full of, like, you know, those pips or whatever being on shoulder, finally being like chief engineer, them like listening to him in the same way, just like Miles O'Brien. Yes, just like Miles, you know, you're going to be the chief engineer. And he's like, Nog, this is wrong. In the end, he was a bad captain, right? Like, he may have been like,
that was deep, because it still reminded me of, oh my goodness, because if you think about it, even though we don't get to see Jake as much as we'd like, or see what he's doing in his downtime, but I'm still taken back to my favorite. If I were to choose the favorite episode of Jake and how I felt like contributed to his character development, was when the Klingon War was still happening and he was with Bashir. I can't get over that. He actually got real PTSD from that. Like, aside from the fact that he was almost killed on that Kid class ship and was low key energy raped by that one alien. Like that's the best way I can put it. That's the best.
that was an episode choice.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. But
going back to our ship episode, contrast Red Squad with Prodigy.
Prodigy would blow them out the water. I swear to God.
But that's the point, right? Is because we've got these kids who, I mean, it's Lord of the Flies.
Yes.
Right. Red Squad are the ones who are going to kill the Sow.
Yeah. They are the prep students, the British prep students. Yeah.
And Prodigy's not going to do that. Prodigy's going to try to come up with a way to, like, that crew is going to try to come up with a better way of doing things.
They're the public school students.
Think about it, now that we're circling back, they're taking the Prodigy crew the same way the Enterprise took Wesley. The exact same way. You're not in Starfleet. You're not really there. You're not, and this is before he became acting ensign. This was before all of that. This is like in the very, very, very beginning, like season 1, season 2. You know, like when he had no title, when he had a gray ass uniform. You know what I'm saying?
Well, when he had the gray uniform, he was acting ensign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sort of.
Can I
really compare that? Because, you know, oh, Manny disappeared on us again. Come back, Manny.
But at any point, we are at an hour and 4 minutes.
Yeah.
There's so much good stuff that we can talk about in Deep Space Nine, because it was such an interesting divergence
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've seen, and I really don't think we've seen anything it's like since, right? I mean,
Well, this was the first Trek spin-off where it was going to be airing at the same time as the show it was spinning off from.
Right.
DS9 was a direct spin-off of Next Generation.
In TNG, it actually also overlaps with Voyager.
Well, Voyager directly spin-offs from DS9 because where does Voyager start from? They're at the station. You have Quark.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how they did it for a few years, where you had all of the 90s Trek shows spun off from a moment that you saw in the previous. Because Enterprise spun off from First Contact.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have
James Cromwell.
Right. They did spin up from First Contact.
Yep.
But when they went to make Deep Space Nine, they were like, we've done the ship thing. We've done the ship thing 3 times now. Let's do something different. And the first plan was a colony. And then, of course, there was they heard about some guy named J. Michael Straczynski.
I was about to say, are we going to skip the controversy?
Oh.
So we were talking. Remember, we were talking about Babylon 5, William, like before we went to air. J. Michael Straczynski actually went to CBS/Paramount with a pitch for a Star Trek series that took place on a station.
That was before CBS.
That's where the 2 different series came from.
And the entity existed. So the idea, and then Paramount, CBS, whoever it was, turns him down and doesn't want to, and doesn't take him up on it. Eventually he shops it around, and I think he goes to Fox, and that's where Babylon 5 aired.
I want to say yes, but then I'm gonna double check.
Yeah, because I want to say it was Fox, but he basically ends up shopping it around, and his idea becomes Babylon 5. Whereas suddenly, all of a sudden, we get Star Trek developing Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm.
They stole the idea.
Warner Brothers commissioned the series, part of the Primetime Entertainment Network.
There is some conversation about how that happened. So there's a fair amount of controversy associated with that sort of relationship.
Well, recall we had a period in the late 90s where there was a lot of idea bleed over, where you had people start working on projects in one studio and then end up jumping to other studios. That's how you get Tombstone and Wyatt Earp, Deep Impact and Armageddon, Volcano and
because these were a lot of movies. I remember there was 2 of
Peak, Dante's Peak. That's what it is. Volcano.
Yes. Peak. I mean, yes, but I mean, to be fair though, a lot of those were there was a big sort of 90s fascination with disaster scenarios, and so,
I know. But every single one of those started at one studio and then got split apart across 2 studios.
Yeah, so I think that's less good. That's more that's more a function of zeitgeist, and sort of cultural fascination with certain topics than it is necessarily than bleed over. Though that does exist, as opposed to something like this where this dude just showed tools on up and is like, hey, why don't we do a space station?
Mm-hmm.
This may be a little bit far-fetched, but I made this argument about a year ago that I am putting it down that I think that Star Trek First Contact and the Aliens sequel are the same film.
I feel like that might have to be a next week kind of episode.
Yeah,
I'm willing to bring the evidence. I believe they are the same.
I know. I totally want to see your receipts. I do, but
I'm going to admit something right now. I have not watched any of the Aliens movies in full. I've watched scenes of some of them, but I haven't watched any of them completely.
Well, some of them are very good.
Yeah.
And others very bad.
Yeah.
I watched the scene in Aliens 3 when there's the baby xenomorph, and
I thought that was 4.
It must have been 4.
It's kind of 3 and 4. It's the end.
I mean, there's the one where she does the swan dive, she's giving birth effectively to the xenomorph, and she does the swan dive into the fire.
Oh, that was in 3. Then I'm talking about 4. Then
4 is when they cloned her 8 times until they got it out of her in the beginning of the film.
Yeah. Got it out of.
Got it. Which Which okay, I have one more question. Even
and then we're gonna call it.
Since we're talking about xenomorphs, is it more of a nod to the Xenomorph universe, or is it a steal to the Xenomorph universe that we saw in Strange New Worlds when we saw what the Gorn were?
I don't think we can necessarily say that it's not a nod, right? Like, because
I think it's definitely a nod, yeah.
Because they literally just
I'm honestly not sure, like, because I think there are also some Predator vibes going on.
Predator and Alien are the same universe.
We see Predator. We see the Predator look at the Narsikins and the Predator culture in the Hirogen.
So, but yeah, no, I think there was a lot of nodding going on, and I think that I'm unwilling to call it theft, because the idea of an alien that hunts people on a spaceship is not exclusive to Alien.
No,
because that could be anywhere.
Yeah,
it's a very, very old trope.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think the way it's set up in that particular episode is very much a nod.
Okay, here's the hugest nod I've ever seen. I'm like, abandoned spaceship where you get like minimal power, and you get.
The fact that Ridley Scott's lawyers aren't suing tells me that it's not.
It's been done so many times. It's been done on Doctor Who a dozen times. It's been done so much that to say one is ripping off the other is
the reason
they're all ripping off someone else that did it 30 years ago.
Is because
although but I gotta say this concept of, like, impregnating and is pretty unique to the Xenomorph universe, right? Like that type of reproduction is very associated with that particular universe, and the fact that now we've got the Gorn doing something similar. I really feel like that episode was very much in dialogue with that storyline.
Yeah,
because I was wondering, and to close it, because of when you talked about Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5, like they're pretty much the same story, but right?
I mean, that too, and including the captain of the space station turning into some sort of Jesus figure.
Yeah,
that part.
All right,
because we've got Sisko as the emissary. Sheridan becomes almost this
godlike
Christ-like figure in Babylon 5. So they're definitely borrowing a tremendous amount from each other, and I think there's a pretty solid argument to be made that there is some cross-pollination is, I think, the charitable way I can describe it.
Because we got two shows, whereas with Strange New Worlds it's just this one episode. But it makes me wonder, because now that we've established how the Gorn live and survive and thrive, are we going to be able to see more of that? Like
that there will be more Gorn next season. Yeah,
I mean, we've certainly seen in Prodigy that apparently the Gorn sort their shit out in some way.
Thanks to Picard, because I have the comic to support it.
Yeah,
I feel good. I feel like Keith should be proud of me.
All right. We are now
in the comments below. Make sure to like and share and subscribe, and join us next week as we'll discuss whether First Contact and Aliens match up at all, and also give your thoughts about the Gorn and Strange New Worlds.
I cannot wait till next Thursday. This is going to be great.
It's going to be a party. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we're certainly glad that you came on this journey with us. And I highly recommend that you go and pull up Netflix or Paramount Plus and watch Emissary this week. Beautiful bean footage.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to ever say it on the internet. Yeah, never. yeah.
I'm sorry. Wait. There was a shadow of a church.
Okay. What?
Well,
William has
Okay,
questionable
I didn't
ideas
catch
about
that
what he
one.
puts.
I didn't
William
catch
has
that one.
questionable ideas about what he puts on the internet.
Oh, I remember that episode.
Uh-huh.
I remember that episode. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wait, what?
We put on an audio version.